Well, good morning. I'm thankful to be with each of you. As God's people here at Reliant, we are a part of a larger church body. We are part of another worshiping community that is Christ Memorial. They're in South County, 5252 Lindbergh Avenue. And I had the assignment. They said, hey, Nathan, you're up. So I was down there last week. I didn't get to be with you. I missed you guys so much. There's nothing against those people down there. I miss being here with all of you. I like being your pastor. But I did kind of talk with Jeff about what he said, and he was like, yeah, I preached the gospel, I guess. And I looked back at what he said, and it was so funny to watch it on video because he did. He said things like, you are loved more than you know. And everyone just kind of stared at him because, well, when a pastor just kind of puts out the gospel multiple times in multiple ways, it's like, Jeff, what do we do? And he said, no, that's the point. The point is that you can't do anything. You just receive this gospel message. And we talk about a manger, a cross, and a crown. You just receive that story. It doesn't have life application. It doesn't tell you to go do stuff. It just says you are loved exactly as you are. And as I thought about maybe why it's a little bit uncomfortable to be preached to this way, I realized that maybe we have a difficulty with sincerity. You ever meet someone who's so sincere, you're just kind of not sure what to do with them? It's jarring when you encounter such sincerity. But me, at the old age of 31, I am ready for more sincerity. I am looking for those who are sincere. I finally got to do a St. Louis thing. I got to go to a Blues game Friday night, and a friend who has season tickets invited me, and we sat second row from the top, so he's a season fan, but he doesn't have the money to get the good seats. But what I enjoyed so much about my friend Patrick is that he was sincere. I said, tell me about the Blues. I got to catch up. What's even going on? I understand offsides. I get how hockey works, but tell me what's going on. He just rambled on and on about the team and how some guy's really fast and he won an award in the All-Star game. That's a thing, right? And he just loves the Blues, and I realized that I was just receiving a deep sincerity of something my friend Patrick loves. And so we were at the game, and we were cheering. And we weren't cheering like ironically or in a funny way. He just cheered because he cares, right? And it was so sincere, it was disarming to me. And all of a sudden I found myself doing like this penalty box dance presented by Amarin or something like that. I don't know. But there was no room for irony or sarcasm. We just decided to go with the whoosh, and it was so sincere. I had a great time because I didn't let the irony, the sarcasm that I usually live by creep in. See, through my 20s, as a millennial, it was cool to be ironic. It was to wear ironic t-shirts, to have bands that pretended to be bigger than life. They pretended to be Motley Crue and other bands that lived wild lives, and I thought that this was cool, this was the way. But now, I'm looking for those who are sincere, sometimes disarmingly so. What if Jesus was sincere today? What if the words you heard from Jesus were sincere? He meant it. You know, see, sometimes Jesus will tell stories that are larger than life to try to make a point. Sometimes he'll talk in metaphor or other kinds of ways. Sometimes it seems like he's sarcastic or has a sharp wit about him to kind of cut to the heart of things. But what if today Jesus was sincere? What if he meant it? Here again, just a couple verses that we read. But I say to you who hear, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. To the one who strikes you on the cheek, give him the other one. And from the one who takes away your cloak, your shirt, give him the clothing that's closest to your skin. Give him everything. Give to everyone who begs from you, and from the one who takes away your goods, do not demand them back. What if Jesus was sincere? There's times he's told people to cut their hand off if it causes them to sin, but I think Jesus is sincere. Love your enemies. He says that the reason you're going to do this is that it's actually going to be tough. It's going to be tough to do these things because we work in a certain transactional kind of world. He describes it right after that. He says, if you love those who love you, what benefit is that? Right? You love people who love you back. That's the way it works. That's what makes life easier. If you do good to those who do good to you, what benefit do you get? You know, it's easy to have a mutually good relationship, but what if Jesus meant it? Do good to those who hate you. I can't help but think that Jesus is being sincere. So what's going to stop us? What would actually stop us from maybe trying to wiggle our way out of it? To try to say, well, Jesus didn't actually mean that, right? I think a way we can do it is we can hear to love your enemies, and I can look at the news and I think, okay, Russia, I got it, right? But what if, Theo, hey bud, we're doing great, guys. No, there's no sorries here. We're doing great, Joe. I appreciate it. I think we can think of the enemy as some kind of intangible way out there kind of person. But do we really need to actually go find someone who's contrary to us? Do we need to look over a few oceans? Can we just look in the room? Can we just look at our jobs? Do we really need to go find enemies that are far away? I don't think so. I think what happens is that there is just too great of a cost associated if Jesus is sincere in these words. It will cost us too much. Do you remember the first bill you had to pay? Like the first bill that wasn't a fun bill, but like, this is now the bill I pay just to exist on earth. I asked Pastor Jeff, and he said for some reason he had to pay an electricity bill. It was like $28 a month every month. And he realized that he had to work to pay that, right? And I think somehow when all of a sudden you start having a bill, the bills, well, they pile up. And somehow they get bigger as your life gets bigger, right? You get married and you have 11 insurances, not 2, right? And I think what's happening is that everything in our lives can become transactional. That our time matters because our time is how we exist. It's how we're going to pay our bills. We surround ourselves with people that, well, give back to us because you got to get things done. All of a sudden, you think of your relationships in terms of transaction. What can you do for me? How will you help me climb, be better, be more fulfilled? Somehow our lives became transactional. The cost, if Jesus is sincere with these words, is too great. When I was living in New Jersey, I came across a pastor who I was able to work with. I loved him to death. I still do. His name was Borbor. Came over from Liberia in 2011. He left his family behind and he came over. He comes in through Newark Airport, and the pastor, what he did is the pastor was already there in Newark, New Jersey, got everyone jobs at the airport. And they would actually catch these Liberian immigrants who were coming in, and they came in with nothing, maybe just a little bit of money, but they would set them up with apartments, and they would set them up with jobs, and they would take care of them. And I can't help but think that this community that welcomed me and loved me, even though I wasn't necessarily an enemy, they were able to take Jesus' words sincerely because they didn't have anything. They didn't have a lot. And you start to realize that if you're going to take Jesus' words sincerely, it's going to cost you something. It's actually easier to do if you hold things loosely, if you don't own a lot of things. I think we have too much to lose. It's too costly. It's interesting then, the way that the gospel works. That there is a God who counted no cost too great. That he would sacrifice everything for you. That he saw us actually in our transactional games unable to love our enemies. He even saw us, dare we say, as enemies of God. And he actually came to be among us to call us back to relationship with the Father. He didn't make a pros and a cons list of saying, if I do this, this will happen. If I do this, something will happen. There was no two-way street love going on here when Jesus came to rescue and redeem and save us. You learn that there was no cost too great for this God because, well, he gave everything. We learn that actually if you love your enemies, it will kill you, quite literally. We learn that actually he's a king who, though he has the power to make anything and everything happen, he doesn't use that power to collect taxes and build an empire, to build a palace for himself. No, he could have done that if he wanted. Instead, he says, I came not to be served, but to serve. And this kind of sincerity, if you hear this gospel, it makes you uncomfortable. Because you say, what do I do now? And you say, go and be loved. I had a friend in Milwaukee, I think I've mentioned him, and he said these words that he just couldn't get his head around, that the gospel is just too good to be true. You ever thought about that? It's just, I don't know, guys. Your pastor stands up in front of you, he preaches to you, he tells you this gospel, and it goes in and it settles in, but it goes back out, and you just think, it's just too good to be true. It all seems foolish because it costs God everything, and the cost is just too high. But then you hear that it's actually the poor in spirit who inherit the kingdom of God. It's actually those who don't count the cost but have no cost at all. It's not that there's the two-way street or a transactional nature. It's that I was thinking about this, that God's love is not kind of this two-way street here in the city. Maybe it's more like the icy one-way street in South City where the car's barreling down and can't quite stop. This is how God gives to us without counting any cost. It's sincere. It might even make you a little bit uncomfortable. As we're wrapping up this idea of Missions Month, mission is God actually seeking to gather all people back to himself. He created everyone, right? He just wants it all back for himself. Some people are too prideful. They say, I don't want any of that. It might mean I have to lose something. It might cost me something. But for us, no, we humble ourselves at this King's feet because he actually comes and he receives us. He pursues us and calls us his own. And as we close out this Missions Month, I've been thinking about that word sincere. You know, sometimes I think Christians say, we got to go out and say the truth. We got to be bold and courageous. But I think sincerity is the way forward. I've been listening to some stories here in this community, and I've been hearing stories of sincerity. The first one I want to share is actually from what we call the Daily Pattern. Now, Jeff jokes that there's thedailypattern.com, and it's a guy who posts a different plaid shirt every day or something like that. No, we do something called thedailypattern.org, and what it is we're going to double down on that through the season of Lent. And actually, as we follow Jesus to the cross, we're going to kind of lean in and see kind of a daily prayer kind of regimen and ritual. But I wanted to highlight something I heard that just blew my mind in its sincerity. And it was actually back from December. It was actually the Rogner family. It was Megan. She writes for the Daily Pattern often. And I wanted to share a short excerpt of one thing she wrote back at Christmas time. Back before Christmas, she wrote this. Last night at bedtime, my daughter Lizzie casually mentioned that she took a book about the Nativity called Come and See to read aloud to her class. Lizzie attends a very diverse urban public charter school. Some of the students practice faiths other than Christianity, and many are not religious at all. If Lizzie had told me ahead of time that she planned to take that particular book, I'm ashamed to say that I might have discouraged her, redirected her to a secular story. I wondered briefly if Lizzie's choice had given offense in what her teacher had thought. I asked her how her class responded to the book, and she told me in her self-assured way that a lot of kids weren't Christian and had a lot of questions, which she and her teacher attempted to answer. Some of the kids even asked what Christianity is, and according to Lizzie, her teacher responded that it's like a tribe. And what a diverse tribe it was already at the first Christmas, poor shepherds and a multitude of the heavenly hosts. Megan continues as saying, sitting at the end of Lizzie's bed last night, I was humbled by the confident faith of a child who knows how to respond to miracles, who fears not, who truly believes that the good news of great joy is for all the people, who without any agenda, beyond wonder and excitement, wants to invite more people into the tribe. Just wonder, this awe that Lizzie had. There's so much to say about it, but what stuck out to me is the way Jesus actually says to have faith like a child. And Lizzie, I think in her mind when she brings this book, and I can't tell Lizzie exactly what she was thinking, but there is no separation between Lizzie and Jesus. There's no Lizzie ends, Jesus begins. It's just Lizzie and Jesus. That is a sincerity that is disarming. There was another story last week when I was at Christ Memorial, Ken Bickle was able to share. Actually, Ken Bickle's amongst us now. He comes and worships here. But he was able to share about spiritual conversations. And when asked why this all kind of matters, why Mission Month matters, he shared, I'm concerned for people's eternity. I'm concerned for people's eternity. Now, if you're young, you might kind of say, that's not really how I'd say it, right? Because we don't always think about the end of life. We're young. We got our whole lives ahead of us, right? But no, I'm concerned about someone. That was so sincere of him to say. It made me realize that maybe, and actually I know this for a fact, I have friends who do not have anyone who knows they are concerned for them. To be concerned for someone. There's a sincerity in that concern. And so Ken is helping us kind of navigate these conversations. And if you don't have a bookmark, it's kind of the way we do mission here in our community, that you're loved and you're sent. I'd love for you to talk with Ken after worship. We're going to close out Mission Month that way, but to be concerned for those you're sent to. The last story of sincerity was one that kind of is personal and a little bit almost embarrassing in a sense. About a year ago, one of my friends, he died. And it was one of those situations where the darkness was just too great for him. He essentially drank himself to death. And he was despondent, disconnected from everyone around him. Except for one friend I have, and she owns a bar in South City, and she was able to care for him in his last 3 weeks of life as he died in the hospital. Well, a year later, some friends got together and said, we need to have a memorial for our friend who has died. And, we had the memorial at the bar. And it was one of the more fun memorials I can remember. But there was, during this memorial, as I was standing with some friends around a table, there was the bar owner, the one who had taken care of my friend in the last 3 weeks of his life. And in came one of my friend who had died's coworkers. And the coworker comes in, goes straight to the bar owner, and just says, and I was hearing it from a distance, I didn't hear every part of it, I just loved, and his name included his name. I just loved him so much. He was such a great coworker. I love him to death. I'm so sorry for your loss. And then she shared the gospel. I didn't hear it all. I heard bits and pieces. And can I be honest? I was almost a little bit like ashamed. I'm like, wait, I'm the pastor in the room. I'm the one who's supposed to be doing this. And maybe my friends were like, wait, did Nathan invite someone from his church? Is that what's going on here? But no, she had such a sincerity about herself that I couldn't avoid that someone heard the gospel that night at a memorial in a bar. Sincerity. Jesus gives without cost in complete sincerity. At the end of our reading, you see that it actually says that God will actually give, and he gives us this image, and I want to close with this. He says, "Give, and it will be given to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, yet running over. This is how your heavenly Father gives to you, not counting the cost." Well, when I go down to South County to work at the Christ Memorial office, I end up at Costco because that's what you do when you're in the county, I guess. And I was eating a hot dog, which is also something you only do in the county. And as I'm sitting at a table eating a hot dog, I see that there's this big Costco grinder. Do you know at the end, like you can buy coffee and then there's a big grinder at the end before you leave the building you can use. And there was a mom who was a bit frazzled, and she had 2 5-pound bags of coffee, looked about 5 pounds, and she takes the 2 5-pound bags, she opens them up, she dumps the 10 pounds or so of coffee into the grinder, takes one of the empty bags, puts it under, and hits go. And I'm eating a hot dog, and I'm watching this go down, and I realize that as coffee beans kind of grind, they expand, and she's shaking, and I see her kind of pushing, and she can't find the button to turn it off, but here comes double the amount of coffee in the bag. She's shaking, panicking, and I'm eating a hot dog, and I don't know how to turn it off because I've never used that grinder, and I realized that just this overwhelming sense came over her that she kind of wanted to just give up. And giving up, I think, might just be the best response to this sincerity of God. That he gives everything, that he pours it on, that we try to kind of shift and mash it down and fit it all in, but somehow God's love takes root in us. It sits in our gut, and we don't know what to do besides just say, I guess I'll take it. I'll receive it, even if it's more than I can handle. And so that's the love we have. That's the love that rests in us. Sincerity. God sincerely means it. He loves his enemies. He does good to those who hate him. He loves even us. Amen.